Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Notice Talks. My name is Giga Lusoy. I am leader of and research at Aalto University, and we have been running these talks for almost 7 years. It's always wonderful to see new faces. Who has not been to a Notice Talk before? Great, so well, welcome those who have not been to a Notice Talk before, and welcome to everyone who has been to one before. So today we have wonderful two speakers as part of Helsinki Design Week program, which has a theme of invisibility. We decided that we're going to look at invisibilities in fashion, production, and consumption system. And I'm going to introduce our speakers, and the format that we follow is each speaker has around 20 minutes to talk about their work. We're not going to take questions in between. And after both of the speakers finish their conversation, finish their talks, we're going to have a panel discussion. And we aim to wrap by 5:45. And it's been a tradition that after these events, people will continue talking. So very casual. There is generally a group meeting at the Badger Bar next door for drinks. So you're more than welcome to join. Today I won't be able to join for long, but I will for 15 minutes. I also would like to thank our event producer and Notice Talks coordinator, Satu Avangranta. She joined us recently, and she has been working very, very hard this month to get this event happening. Okay, so without further ado, we have Natalia Moreira here and Paula Sartsama. So Natalia is an interdisciplinary researcher of fashion management and engineering, and a project manager with circular and systemic focus on sustainable materials and their value chains. Natalia advises global brands and carries out research on sustainability for action-oriented projects. She contributes to vital academic debates on fashion and textiles, and she has been with us at Aalto University as a researcher, but she has now been offered a lectureship at Aalto University in creative business. So we're congratulating her and also, of course, expressing that we are sad to see her leave, but wonderful achievement. And Paula is Infinited Fiber Company's program manager, circular economy enthusiast with passion for finding solutions to decrease the environmental impact of fashion industry. She's focusing on creating collaborations with other stakeholders in the circular value chain and ecosystem with an aim of making circularity in textiles an everyday reality. So, Natalia, please welcome. I'm just going to put your slides on. Stop share. I think, just a second. PowerPoint. It works better if I first do this. Mac and Microsoft bickering going on a little bit. And then I'm going to share my screen. Share. Great. Okay. So here is your microphone.
Okay, so I'll try to do the microphone. I'm not really good at it. I hate holding it, but here you go. Good afternoon to everybody. Really glad to see a lot of familiar faces here. The ones that are not familiar, equally happy. I'm going to talk about the idea of making the invisible more visible in the fashion industry. And to do so, I'm going to be talking about the New Cotton Project. So, hi, this is me. A lot of the things I'm going to be saying, because we just have 20 minutes, is very fast. You can find on our website, Circular Textiles. If you use the QR code, you can access it immediately. I've done this the last week, so I'm feeling very tech.
Sorry, we have a tiny problem. The online participants are seeing the presenter view,
Oh.
and it also means that our video is in presenter's view. I'll try to fix that if I can. Sorry. So PowerPoint, how do we do this? View.
I think you can select.
Select how?
How I would do on mine, I would share and select the screen should be shared to be the main screen.
Okay, stop sharing. Share.
And then you can put just desktop. Oh yeah, on PowerPoint.
Just desktop.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that might work better, yes.
And
Right.
then just present, so it should create.
Slideshow. Oh,
Yes.
no, it didn't work.
No?
No,
Did it work?
no, it's still presenter.
No, it's just that this is
Right.
the.
Okay.
It's okay now.
Thank you. So yeah, the QR code works. I'm very proud of it, super high tech, but it takes you straight there, so you don't need the website anymore or me grumbling about it. But as we're here to talk about the invisibility of something, my first question, and I want to exchange a little bit of ideas with you. So when you shop for clothes, what do you think about usually? Anybody? Just.
Do I really need it?
Do you need it? Yes. What else?
Looks good.
If it looks good, the material's perfect. So usually we have this list, right? Do I have the money? Do I need it? Is it a good brand? Is the material that I want? Is the quality that I expect? Do I know if the brand and quality works? Do I have previous experiences with the material, with the brand, with whatever? Or word of mouth. My friend said that XYZ is awesome, so I'm going to buy XYZ material-wise or whatever-wise. Anybody disagrees with this? My talk is more thinking about how recyclable is your clothes. So usually we're thinking about materials, but how many times have you bought something thinking about how it's going to end its life? You did.
Yeah, well, what I buy is, I always think that, when I don't want to use it as it is, so what do I do with it?
Okay.
So basically, is that I try to buy something that I can reshape it or reuse it or repurpose it.
Perfect. So usually when we're talking about, I'm using here the great example from our collection. And by our is an Adidas product. So it's a jumper. Really pretty. I love it. But that is made with our material. But when we started working on this project, we started looking into a product, not just from the perspective of what it is, but also what composes it. So instead of thinking of a jumper just for the sake of a jumper, we needed to think of which kind of material is used. Is all the material the same material? How about the sewing? So if you're using some kind of thread, is the thread the same material as the main material? So for you to understand a little bit better, I'm going to introduce you to the New Cotton Project. So it's a Horizon 2020, even though 2020 has been a while ago, still that's the name, but it's an European Union funded project. And it's pretty much a combination of 12 companies that go all the way through having the little parts of the chain, so the value chain. We're going to get into details. I see some puzzled faces, but it's a combination of all of the companies that put together can create a new product. So far, so good? Yeah. Along with them, we have the researchers. So we have Revolve Waste that focuses on waste, in this case, textile waste. Rise that is doing all of the technical LCA part of the business. And we have Aalto University, that's where I stand. And we're bringing the research in the perspective of the whole, the ecosystem. Some of these brands I'm going to guess, usually Adidas, H&M, everybody aware of those? Yeah, they tend to be very big. Some of the others are smaller, but we're all engaged into this project, really thinking about how can we make a difference on the system side of the value chain. So let's think of the theory behind, and this is ecosystem building. I love this example, not exactly the most academic example, but everybody here heard about the linear production. Usually is the idea that you go from point A to point B, and everything that is not needed anymore is tossed. So if I have cotton, I'm going to use the plant of cotton. I just need the flower of it. Everything else can be discarded. That becomes waste. When we start looking into systems production model, you start looking into how can I use the other bits of the cotton, for instance. So if I had to throw away the stem, I had to throw away the seeds, what can I do with it? Let's turn it into compostable material for another production or the same production. I go into the industry, and then there is the cleaning. So there is a lot of materials that just get pushed out. I don't know if you ever saw, for instance, the carding process, which is literally getting 2 brushes and doing this. So it's scratching the cotton into the same direction. So, of course, lots of waste. What can we do with that? So when we start moving from a linear model to a systemic model, we start thinking about how can we transform what was previously seen as waste into something that is usable or some input for another production. The next stage is what we call the circular economy, which tries to expand that idea of systems into something that can be reinserted into itself. So far, so good. I'm staying with the theoretical side of it. She's going to do the practical side. So the idea here is that I'm going to use everything that I'm going to use for the cotton, I'm going to put on the t-shirt, and then it's going to go back. Is this doable just the way it's said? From what I just said before? It's kind of hard, isn't it? If I already told you that there are wastes that come out of the cotton, and this waste doesn't go into the t-shirt, we already know that there is something that is happening. So that's when we start looking into the idea of an ecosystem. So it's not just about the 1, 2, 3 that combined happen and create a product. We start looking into the activities that combined will create not just your product, so the retail, wholesale, but also the other things. What is going to come out of it, and in a circular ecosystem, which is the most ideal scenario, if you ask me, how we're going to make it so that there is as little waste as possible, or ideally 0 waste, yeah? So then you create activities that are going to embrace this other way, formerly known as waste, now known as maybe outputs, which I know that somebody there doesn't like the word, but I use it still. But they create the outputs and create it into something else. So far, so good. So this is the theory behind the new cotton. What does the theory mean? So in the new cotton, we have this innovative technique to create fabrics coming from post-consumer textile waste. What does that mean? Here in Finland, you have the UFF boxes. You put stuff there. Not all of the things are going to be sold. Some of those things are going to be discarded. I'm not saying we use those exact materials, but using that kind of thing. So post-consumer textile waste. It can be that. I'm going to show you examples of how it can be, but that's one way to see it, okay? Literally, don't want this anymore, throw it away, we take it. The new cotton gets this post-consumer textile waste and it starts separating because it just uses cotton. It's in the word, but it needs to be high content of cotton. It goes through several processes and then it becomes a fiber, which is then sent to our partners. So we have Textina, Kipas, and Innovafil, who who are going to get this fiber and start the textile process of it. The same way that we had carding, for instance, but now just with this fiber. This material is then produced into garments. I showed you the jumper, which are going to be sold by Adidas and H&M. And Adidas is in charge of collecting those again and reintroducing it to our system. So this is the circular ecosystem that is proposed by the New Cotton project, yeah? So far, so good, good. What happens here is we're looking into then, so you stop looking into the product from the product's perspective, but you also need to think of how do I make sure that if I throw away that jumper can be recycled. You start looking into all of the things that compose this jumper. So the yarn that is used to thread, to sew it, matters. If I have rabbits instead of just normal, just literally a snatch, or that's not a good vocabulary. If you have metal in the jumper, or if I'm going to use a print that is not going to be possible to remove it easily, therefore making the process more harder. So that's why we investigated mostly 4 streams of waste. This is the beginning. Again, you have more information on the website, but we looked into color garments, cotton sheets, white garments, and denning. Denning, everybody knows, pure cotton, great. Problem with it, it has zippers, it has rabbits, it has everything. So it usually implies an added cost to whomever is going to have to tear that apart and separate all the bits and have to look into, you see the difficulties. So we looked into those, and we also looked into the other possibilities for what could happen there. So what if we do gather 100 kilos of shirts from youth, from the UF basket? What can we do with that? What else is possible? I'm here. I think I'm talking really fast. I'm sorry for that. But so what makes it invisible? Why am I here talking about the invisibility of the New Cotton project? Because we're talking about, we launched this, it's 4 pieces that were launched last October the 6th. We're in September. We're in September, so it cannot be this year. And you can see that we worked, so it's, as we said, Adidas and H&M. So this is the Adidas collection, that's the H&M collection. And the idea was, let's see how the market embraces what we have. Let's see if the person that buys this jumpsuit ensemble, if this person understands that this came from post-consumer textile, this came from waste. If that is seen as a positive thing or a negative thing for the consumers. And let's see if we can actually recollect this and reintroduce this into our circular ecosystem. Yeah. Consumers don't see the process of it. And we're still running through the data on how this was perceived. But if you look at this, the 4 products, would you say that this came from recycled products? This was a recycled, we try not to use recycled nor regenerated. We're working on the nomenclature yet. But would you say that these products have a different source material than this, a traditional cotton shirt, just looking at it? If you feel it, and I don't know if we can go around. Yeah. If you feel it, it still feels like cotton, but it has all of this history behind that is really hard to put through. When we usually talk about fashion and what is not seen in fashion, we talk about very often Patagonia's campaign. So don't buy this jacket. It was in the 90s. And what happened when they said, don't buy these jackets? People bought the jackets. They went super into skyrocketed in sales and did great. That wasn't the purpose, but that's how it worked. I don't know. This is for older people, AKA not me. But I don't know if you remember this from WFF, Worldwide Fund. Yeah. Do you remember this? Do you remember when you were younger, seeing like these campaigns when they would go into the snow and film these people killing these cute little seal pups? This is another thing that is usually thought when it comes to fashion. I have a beautiful picture from my native town of Manchester with child labor. Yes, that used to happen in Europe. You're not so out of that. Or for instance, Planet will be, that's very popular in the UK. That is a campaign for you to swap things. So you go to the store, you don't necessarily buy something, you bring your stuff, you kind of swap it. Yeah. But I'm not saying that these are not important campaigns, and they all had their impact, they had their purpose. How easy is it for you to find fur in a normal store nowadays? Kind of hard, not impossible, but hard. So these campaigns worked their way. Patagonia is still struggling to make their way through, but still. Now, these are the traditional ways to look into what is invisible in the fashion industry. What we're bringing with the new cotton is this other reality of the material itself, is a way to look into how to create a solution from a local perspective. In this case, very focused on Europe, but one of our partners is in Turkey. So it's not just Europe. Still, it's a way for also to create this acknowledgement of different approaches to the invisible side of fashion. And to conclude, I would like just to show you this quick video. Some of you might have seen it already. I broke it. No, I didn't. Wait, sorry. I know that you can see the screen.
Yeah, I can't.
Just a second. I did not think this is true. No, it's just that it's still not loading anyways.
Ay, sorry.
Uh,
Okay, so you would like to share
but
this?
you're sharing your desktop, no?
I am actually, but it's not
Oh yeah, I think I need to pull to this one. Yes.
right. Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'll do it if you.
No, that's fine.
Yes. And then large screen.
Where are you, mouse? Here. Yes. Huh?
Awesome.
Okay.
And if you could take the captions off.
Now where's the mouse?
It's there. You're near. Yes. Yes.
Change. You don't want captions?
Yeah, I just want to
Click. Well,
because the video has captions, so it's going to be one on top of the other.
I don't know if I have captions on or off.
It was on, but
Okay.
maybe
What does that say? So click.
if you
Here, yes, right. Click that. Yeah, change. Thank you. Off.
yeah, off. It's
Yeah.
perfect.
Grand.
So I know. Why is it? Okay, sorry. Technical issues, just a second. There you go. Are we okay on that? Yeah, I know. In my defense, there were several technical issues, but it's just one slide, the last one. Yeah. So that was just to show that there is a lot of invisibilities in the back when we're talking about the fashion industry as a whole. The new cotton is approaching one very specific side of it, but we are all trying to do the same thing, create awareness towards the consumer so that the consumer also understands that they are a part of the solution as well as they are part of the problem. Thank you. Again, the QR code will take you to the lovely website. Please access it. It's very important. And thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. So my name is Paula Sarsama. I come from the Infinited Fiber Company. We are a startup company located in Espoo, Otaniemi. I'm going to talk to you from a bit of a different perspective. I have a strong engineering background, so I'm a bit boring compared to Natalia, but I think a lot of the things that Natalia brought up are really, really important, and it kind of just shows how much invisibilities there are. I'm kind of going to go into detail about some of the invisibilities in one small part of the value chain. Just very shortly about us so that I can kind of give you a better idea of what we do. So we are a technology startup, started in 2016. And currently we have a bit over 70 employees. We're growing very fast, so our slides aren't keeping up with us. We have investors from many areas, but there has been a lot of interest from global brands trying to find new solutions. So we have companies like H&M Group, Adidas, Bestseller, and Zalando behind us. We have 2 pilot sites. That means that we do our fiber production in pilot scale. So it means it's not like industrial huge factories yet, but it's bigger than lab scale. So we can provide our fibers to brands and they can make capsule collections. But so far we're still limited to a production of about 10 tons per year. But we're preparing to start our first industrial scale factory in 2026, and that's kind of keeping our company very busy at the moment. So almost everybody in our company is tied to this factory project. And that will be a factory with a capacity of 30,000 metric tons per year, which would equal production of about 100 million t-shirts if they were made of 100% Infinna. So when I speak of Infinna, I speak of our fiber, which is our only product that we sell currently. And it's recycled cotton, basically. And we do speak of it being a recycled textile, but that's maybe because it depends who you're speaking. I mean, engineers, we're very pragmatic and we speak that it's recycled textiles because it's recycled textiles. So what happens is that we purchase textile waste from a sorting collecting company. So in Finland, we have this regional actor, Länsi-Suomen Jätehuolto, which is the only one actually here who's producing it. And they already sort the material so that suits our process. So we can take materials or our process works best with a fraction that has a minimum of 88% cotton. And the rest of the 12%, it can be polyester, elastane, or other kinds of impurities, which are very typical in textiles. And this also means that in the same batch, if we think that you can have t-shirts with 30% polyester, as long as there's like pure cotton garments also. So the batch is the one that kind of defines how much materials or impurities can have. And then in our process, we create like a completely recycled textile fiber, which is very cotton-like. So it's they've been going around here. It's a cellulose carbamate, so it's not cotton, but cotton-like. It's biodegradable and it's completely free of microplastics. And yarns and fabrics can be manufactured with this fiber just as they are with other conventional fibers. So you can use 100% Infinna for production, or you can mix it with other fibers. But when you mix it with other fibers, we get back to the problematics of recyclability. So we don't want our fiber mixed with polyester, for example, because that makes it difficult to recycle. But if you mix Infinna with cotton, you can go back into the cotton recycling stream. So this is a very brief overview of our technology. I won't go into details here, but just to see the process. So as I said, the first stage is that we have the cotton-based material coming in. It's all the zippers, buttons, prints, which Natalia mentioned, those are already removed before that. It's torn and shredded, and it goes into our process. And in the first stage, we call it the pre-processing step. All these harmful constituents are removed, like dyes and polyester, elastane. And after that, we have a very clean, like cellulose fraction left. And then this is kind of the magic process from our company. We call it carbamation. So if you're familiar with the viscose process, they also use this type of raw material, but they have very toxic chemicals which they use in their process. We don't use toxic chemicals. We use urea as our reactive agent. And from there, we create this stable, dissolvable cellulose carbamate powder, which is just this brown powder you can see in the background. That is then dissolved, and then it can be wet spun as fibers in our spinning process. Then we, after the fibers are spun, they're cut into staple fibers, so just short fibers and packed, and that's when it leaves our hands. After it leaves our hands, it goes to yarn spinners, and from there to weavers or fabric makers, and then from there on to garment makers set by the brands. And how this usually works is that the brand owners are the ones who decide where we ship. So they already have their set sort of value chain of who they subcontract with. So this is just to sum up what our Infinifiber is. So it's completely born from waste, soft and natural to the touch, and a true alternative to virgin materials like cotton, viscose, and polyester. What's also special about our process, it saves water. So it's a very water scarce process. And as you all know, cotton is a really bad guy when it comes to waters and toxins also when you speak of like pesticides. And those are all things that we aren't using. Okay, so I like to speak about our technology all day, but really a technology alone, it's nice to have, but you can't do anything with just a technology. So what we need around a technology is an ecosystem. And this is where the New Cotton Project came in, which Natalia already nicely explained. The idea behind this, so our company is coordinating this project. I'm actually the coordinator of the project. It's not very typical that a small startup starts coordinating a large Horizon project. But this was seen as an excellent, or it had so much potential for us that it was worth the try. And the idea was that we could really kind of demonstrate that this kind of ecosystem that our company wants to act in on industrial scale is possible to run in Europe. Because before we start an industrial plant, we have to know that we actually have a position in the market and all the necessary like network partners and subcontractors are available. And we also want to see what the possible bottlenecks and challenges would be. So this is a picture which Natalia has kindly made for us, and I always like to show it that if you take one of these partners out of here, the circular system doesn't work. And this has been really important because we've had challenges in the beginning, which we've solved on the way. So we had to find steady and suitable post-consumer textile streams. There's a long way from dropping the clothing into Conti, you know, this Red Cross box, before it actually becomes recycled. Because collecting, sorting, those are things that are very manual still, and there's not very many automated systems. They're not very reliable. Also, teaching the consumer which box they're supposed to put things in. So that's one of the invisibilities when you speak of, okay, this is recycled, that there's a lot of things happening before you have the right materials there. Also, developing suitable machinery for separation and fiber identification processes. So clothing, it can have like different material on the sleeves, it can have different pockets and things. So if you have an automated system, where does it put it? If it kind of, the sensor hits this part, but the sleeves are different, it just might go in the wrong box. So these are all things that we wanted to bring into the design thing, that now Adidas and H&M, when they design clothes, they think of this. Also, we need to ensure that all these processes are financially viable. So even if we have a great idea, we want to be circular, we want to be sustainable, nothing works if it's not business. So nobody will start doing this if there's no potential to make money. And speaking of that, so of money, these technologies that are behind these, our technology or all these other ones that are new on the market, there's an immense amount of money and working hours behind that. And all this technology requires constant R&D investments. And of course, this makes the fiber cost something. Our idea is that at the end, Infinna will be available to all. It will be like a mainstream fiber. We don't want it to be like an exclusive fiber to only the high-end market. But this is really something that the consumers maybe don't see, and they maybe don't understand why, like new materials, why does a garment maybe cost 10% more at this stage? So it's not just a premium for being new, it's because something has to be paid for the R&D behind it. Also, this R&D in a circular economy, it differs from linear systems because everything comes around again. You face the same problems. In the linear system, you can kind of sell your product and kind of close your eyes and just hope there's not like reclamations coming in. But in the circular system, you really want to understand how all the pieces work, because otherwise you'll just have the problems coming back to you. So in order to create a sustainable business, we need to have new circular business models, really understand how to make business in this and how to expand. We have to ensure that these there's not like extra cost accumulation along the value chain, because if we start out that the textile waste, for example, the sorting is too expensive, that accumulates along the value chain and ends up on the consumer's purchase price. And what we really want to do is boost this collaboration inside like circular ecosystems. And we speak of open innovation, which is it's a term which has been spoken of a lot in the last decades, but it like truly happening, I'd say the breakthrough has been the last 10 years. So I've been working with European projects for 25 years, and the word has been around for a long time, but nobody's really known what it is. It's just written everywhere. But this circular economy really makes it essential, because you have to collaborate with the other partners in the ecosystem to solve collateral problems. And that's when we start speaking of transparency. And again, transparency causes challenges in IPR issues. So that's completely new. Also, IPR in circular economy. How do we share but not lose our IPR? And these are all challenges that are kind of on the table at the moment. Okay, so then we come up to the next problem. So now we have the pilots, which produce 10 tons per year, which is not very much. And we want to start offering this fiber to the larger market. There's a definite pull from the brands. So at the moment, we just cannot provide what is asked from us. So we have, in our plans, we have a factory that will start in 2026 in Kemi, which is in northern Finland. This is at the site of a discontinued Stora Enso paper mill, which means that I think it was closed a couple of years ago. That means that there's a lot of available highly qualified employment in the area, so process workers. We are offering them 270 direct jobs when this is opened, or when already now that we're starting to build up. So we're recruiting. In addition to the 270 direct jobs, there's at least double indirect jobs. And this is something that we want to boost in Finland, is that showing that by these new sustainable technologies, we can kind of even out the bumps in the road that have become from the paper industry changing. So this factory, it will be 30,000 tons in Finland per year, and we've already sold almost all the production for the first 5 years. And so the first commercial deliveries will be in 2026. And then my last topic about invisibilities, which maybe the consumer never sees, is kind of what's it's a pain and it's a challenge, and but it's also a possibility for us, is the EU legal issues. So the EU has launched a EU strategy for sustainable and circular textiles. And this is great because the Europe is really being a forerunner in creating a green economy, and we should be really proud about this. So this requires member states, for example, this is just one part of the Green Deal, is this strategy for sustainable and circular textiles. So, for example, all member states are required to collect textiles separately from 2025. But what has not been defined by the EU is that what do the member states do with this textile waste that's collected? And this is something that we saw as that where we can offer a solution, is that for the fraction of cotton rich textile waste, we can use it. And there's a lot of other technologies coming in, and a lot of other because not all textiles will be chemically recycled. Then you also have mechanically recycled textiles. So our focus is on chemical recycling. You also have the resell market. There's very many things, but there's no kind of guidance from the EU of what should be done with it. Then we also have the new design requirements for textiles, which are under the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation. So these requirements will set mandatory minimums for inclusion of recycled fibers in textiles. This is not yet decided, but it may be that in the EU, when you bring a new garment to the market, it's required that it has a minimum of 10% recycled fibers. Sounds great, but where do the brands get the recycled fibers? Because there's not enough on the market at the moment. Also, if you speak of recycled fibers right now, the only recycled fibers that are really available on the market are polyester fibers made from PET bottles, which is kind of it's recycled, but it should actually be recycled in the bottle stream, not into the textile stream, because now that they're recycled into polyester fibers, the technology to further recycle these polyester fibers is not there. So truly recycled fibers, they're not yet available. So I hope this will come in, but with a reasonable time frame for companies to adjust to these requirements. Then we also have the harmonized EU rules on extended producer responsibility for textiles. So producers are going to be responsible for what they bring on the market. Related to this, the digital product passport, this will be linked to every product sold. So it will need mandatory information, for example, on LCA, so life cycle analysis, circularity, environmental aspects. There's a lot of work going on this right now because it's complex. If you think of like one garment, that would require information from each of the producers in the value chain. Who owns that information then? Is it a risk to disseminate? So there's a lot of things going on. Also, it should be informative to the consumer, because I think if it's full of like processing data, it's most likely like a QR code that you can see on your phone. But if a regular consumer sees that, okay, it's used this and this much energy to produce, it doesn't really give much information to you. So it should be somehow given in a way that the consumer understands. Then the last thing that is now quite new, it's the Green Claims Directive proposal, which I think is really great, because consumers right now are, I wouldn't expect a consumer to be able to understand what's being marketed to them, because I mean, I'm in the field and I struggle when I see everything has like green tags on them and it says sustainable collection or it says recycled content. But the EU is now really going to tackle what you can say on them and that you have to be able to verify these things. So this is coming in the future. It's under discussion right now. And each member country is now commenting the suggestions, and we'll see how that goes. There's also actions to address this microplastics problem, so related to polyester. And also one big issue is halting the export of textile waste. So really, we need to stop dumping our problems into third countries. That's the thing, that we need to find solutions here and not take them there. So in general, legislation is not something that you see when you go and kind of gut feeling shopping somewhere, but there's a lot of issues behind there, and EU has really taken its place as being a strict partner here. Which is great, and this is, somebody has to do it, somebody has to sort of open the game. But of course, we have to think of the companies in Europe, that these are all, each rule and each incentive that is brought to companies, that increases costs, and that means it increases the cost of the garments being sold to the consumers. So how do we sustain the competitive edge on the global markets? There's going to be very strict rules about what's brought onto the European market, but they're kind of tackling now. So what do we do with Wish, or what do we do with Shein? Because how do we control those companies? So I think there's a lot of open issues, but I really hope that will affect how things are done also outside Europe at some point. It's going to be a slow road, but there's a lot of things that are happening. And how these are going to be expanded, so it's consumers who are going to make the change. So as long as, companies are making what consumers want, and of course this is related to education and consumer acceptance and awareness, and that's what creates the pull. So this is, I think, my last slide. So what we aimed at, we want to be inspiration, that this is truly doable, and these things can be brought to the market. We hope that those won't be recycled for a long time, but when they are, they can be put in our process. And we want this to be just one stepping stone towards industrial production, and also for other actors on the recycling market. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. So may I please invite you to
So I am going to make a slide change. I will be the microphone carrier around you. So if you have questions, please raise your hand, and I'll be right there. Also, dear online participants, you can write in the chat, and I am going to, and everybody's seeing my private agenda after after this.
So, who I'm going to be doing what time and where. But anyhow, thank you so much, both. I learned quite a lot. It was very interesting. And I wonder if there are any questions already. Okay, yes. Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, so I was really interested in just selecting garments and taking them back, because whenever I heard about circular economy in the fashion industry, that was the main problem. Everybody was together, different threads, and what to talk about the else. And I was wondering how exactly it's been done. Are they just being cut out, or how do you make sure that in the end it's just cotton that you are recycling?
Yeah, so there's existing equipment which spread about zippers and buttons and rings. So they're all kind of programmed to take those out. Then we have these infrared systems which kind of distinguish which materials they are. But a lot of the work is done by hand. So you actually have people who feel them and they're more accurate and easy. Which makes it slow and expensive. So that's the way it's done, and actually how we then work as a company is that, we test like different batches from different sorters, because it's usually the same kind of batches that you end up getting, and they use the same kind of systems. And then we just qualify with them and get some fine for us. So our process is not, it's not like super sensitive, that if there's 87% cotton, something in the crush, it's just that it's more, techno-economically feasible with 88%. And then there's less waste coming out, because of course, if we take out 12% waste already, that means we have 12% coming out. If it were, we could take out 40% polyester with our process, but that wouldn't be very efficient and that wouldn't be very environmentally friendly. So we're just taking a chemical usage and
Okay, you two were like right at the same time, so I'll give the microphone to you first, and then you can pass it there. My question is more like a follow-up to the previous question. What do you do then with like the zippers and all the buttons? Do you reuse them, or like what happens with them, or does it just become a waste?
yeah, so zippers and buttons, they go to metal. Metal is easy to recycle. There's existing processes, so that's good. But if you think of like prints, like these big PVC prints, there's nothing you can do with those. So that's something not about. But our prints, they're all water-based. Yeah, so if you think of like Patagonia t-shirts, they used to have these big plastic. These days they're printed with different technology, so they're not like sweaty plastic.
Usually, if it's thick enough that you feel it, that's not okay. That tends to be the rule I use.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question actually for both of you, the same question. So there's lots happening in your actually in engineering side and all on the research side. But what is the single thing that you're kind of most excited about? What is actually happening? And kind of makes you buzzing that this is great that finally is there something that you can put your finger on it?
Europe is actually looking into things. I think the last slides from Paula, for me, that makes a huge difference, because they're now not just imposing that you need to have some recycled material, but they're also going to check and create rules, stricter rules for like labeling. So because how many people think that, oh, I'm not going to buy something that says it's eco just because I don't know if it's really eco. At least the European Union is really going after that. Like, for instance, when I was saying that we don't call it recycled from the academic perspective, because recycled has this pejorative kind of nuance to it. But if you think about, if from now on recycled means that it has to be re-recyclable, great. So that changes the meaning of the word, establishes the word, and from that point on, I can rely on the fact that everything that is recycled is going to be re-recycled. Great. So I think that the legislation on it makes a huge difference. Because we, like for instance, for the collection to come out, one of the biggest struggles is that it came out as viscose, even though it's a different process, but that is a strong regulation in the EU, so that had to be like that. If everything from now on starts being more strict and more regulated, not saying that's the perfect world, but I think that.
Maybe from my point of view, what really, we see that we have a solution to these huge hordes of textile waste. That you see in the news, you see in Chile, you see on the beaches in Ghana. But we also recognize that we are only like one small solution to that, and the big solution is is consumption. And, but we want to kind of, that's something that we keep on bringing, that, yes, we want the material, but we know we don't want to be consumed more.
First of all, I think it's super interesting. Thank you for the talk. I have a question regarding the work with H&M. As they have been also one of the biggest fast fashion companies. How is actually their mindset towards now working with new kind of technologies, and is it rather a pull from consumer needs or an intern change?
Yeah, so I'd say they have to change strategies, and they have changed their strategy. Also, I think it's a lot to do with consumers and how they are looked at, but H&M Group has done a lot of investments. It's not only on us, they've invested in Renewcell and many other of these sustainable technologies, and I think that's the easiest way for them to make an impact.
We have to remember that there's also the fact that fast fashion is bad, but it also creates a democratization of garments, which is good. We're not saying that all of fast fashion is horrible, because it does have the social side to it. But it could be good. I know that there's something about it.
I wanted to add how accessible these materials are to smaller brands, because even though we're not like bigger players or something like this, like we're mainly smaller brands, and sometimes try to use desktop materials and things like this, which also a way to work on the circularity. But do you have like big minimums or how do you want to ask?
Well, basically, because we only sell fibers, so we have like fibers which we sell out, which nobody does anything with. You have that, and so we sell the fibers to brands, and then they carry it out. We've done, of course, you see the big brands mostly, but we've also done smaller collections and smaller samples for smaller brands. So it is possible, but it does need that the brand at this point of time has the capacity to actually just buy fibers and go through the system. So we don't have any like fabric stocks.
Yes. I have sort of two questions. I was curious to what Paula mentioned about the demand is starting to grow, that the supply is not keeping up. So I'm wondering if you can open up of what is stopping it. And also, like you were mentioning that H&M is investing. So are these type of retailers investing in the development of these fibers, or who is investing in this?
Yeah, so the first question, it's so mechanically recycled fibers have been around for a long time. So there's we also have finished actors on the market with mechanically recycled cotton. Those are better available, but also they are sold out completely. Then when we speak of mechanically recycled fibers, when you mechanically recycle fibers, they get shorter in the process, which means that the quality is lower. So you have to mix it together with the virgin fibers for it to be feasible for stamp garments. But in order to start a factory making mechanically recycled cotton, the investments are reasonable. So you can pretty soon get return on investment. When we're speaking of chemically recycled fibers, the technology is new. So it's like we are the first ones coming out with an industrial level factory from textile to fiber. Renewcell has their first industrial scale factory, and they're going from waste to bulk. So from there, their material is sold to fiber makers. But the investments are huge. So our first factory, which is still quite small, it's over 400 million euros. For a startup company to gather an investment of 400 million euros, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of uncertainties with technology. It's just the problem that the technology is so new that there's not players on it. And all the brands want to have this now, so they're just not non-existing. And so there's the brands are investing in these technologies. Like we've had H&M, Zalando, and many others also. That is one way that they're trying to help this come to market. That's also one way they ensure that they will be one of the buyers of the fibers, because not everybody's going to be able to get the fibers.
There's also the whole consumer issue of getting, because we said that if you put your stuff in the bins for textiles, we said that you can find metal zippers, the obvious stuff, but apparently they also find sandwiches and trash and other things. So it's not exactly easy to get the post-consumer textile into the factory to become a fiber either. And that's a big stuff. That is complicated. And we're working with a huge company. Still not so easy. So don't throw trash whenever you're putting stuff on bins.
I have a question. So we have been talking about very interesting, very important topics. I kind of want to maybe draw our attention to the big picture. So maybe my question is twofold, or maybe I have two questions. One is, of course, I mean, Paula, you said that consumption needs to be reduced, and we know that consumption needs to be reduced radically, not only in fashion, but in all areas of life. And then, Natalia, you showed us the campaign for the $2 t-shirt. And we know that not buying cheap clothes is going to make the lives of those people better in the short term. So I wonder if you have any knowledge on, you know, how the business might be evolving in the longer term. So, for example, another invisibility is climate change, and the fact that we are not at the moment counting our emissions that actually is produced as a result of, you know, our clothes being produced elsewhere, and still we have huge carbon footprint. And so, for example, do you see a localization of production, and what kind of discussions are being held in the industry about making the transition, while also assuring that those people at the other end of the production are not going to lose their livelihood?
Yeah, so this is an important part of our scaling up strategy. So we see that our factories will be located in so-called hubs. So we have the idea, or this is the dream, that you have a textile circularity hub. Ours will be, first one in the Nordic countries will be in Kemi. But the market on the Nordics, the amount of textile waste in the Nordics is limited, so we don't even need a large factory. But the idea is that in the same site, we will have different layers of the circular economy. You can use different streams from the waste. So then you could have, for example, one in Spain, that there will be us using the cellulose fraction and somebody else using the polyester fraction. And these would all be acting close to each other so that we don't have the extra logistics. We'd also like to bring the textile industry back to Europe, but that's a question of cost. There's a strong textile history in Portugal, Italy, Turkey. Those countries are still active. They do very high quality materials. So those are countries we're kind of looking at. further for our scaling up in the next stage. But we also do see that, like Asia, Africa, these countries are extremely important on the long run. For example, if we think of Asia, the amount of textile waste being already just born in the clothing industry there, we could use the cutting scraps for that for production. One thing we'd also like to tackle there is the viscose factories, because they are using these toxins and they are not using the same kind of safety standards as in Europe. There's a lot of health issues due to poor working conditions. And these viscose factories could be refurbished into, for example, our container factories with minor or reasonable investments, and offer the local people a safe place to work. So these are all things we're trying to keep in the back of the mind, but it's a step-by-step tool.
Yeah, on that note, because it just complemented, like I said, it's a great thing that European Union is was creating stronger standards for sustainability and stuff. But yeah, there is the fact that European Union is what of the world. It's a very small percentage. A lot of the production comes from abroad, and there are countries that rely on that kind of production, like Bangladesh is the best example because it's the Rana Plaza just celebrated 10 years. So that we keep on pulling like, oh, it's so bad, we shouldn't buy the €2 shirt because it was produced in Bangladesh. But yeah, we need to do it in such a way that we guarantee that the work stays there too. It's not just we don't buy it from now on, and the work is in Bangladesh is going to improve or something like that. So I think that that's also a consideration. It doesn't matter. It's important that, okay, great, Europe is moving forward and is trying to change their standards, but we shouldn't stay just within Europe, because there are other countries that not just rely on the European market and so on. So I think that balance needs to exist, and there needs to be the concern, and we need to think about, especially because I'm not even European, just born in the continent, but that's the thing. You know, like we need to also think outside of the boundaries of geography, because the pollution that is produced I'm going to stick to Bangladesh. If there is any Bangladeshi here, I'm sorry, but it's just because it's a very popular example. So if they produce something chemically and have all the problems, it doesn't mean that the pollution that just stay there, or it doesn't mean that everybody there wants to have that kind of problem there. It's not that they're doing it because they don't care about my health or anything like that. So I think that there is also the concern needs to be thinking about those people as well. So it's not just let's improve Europe and let's forget about the rest of the world. Also because Europe wants the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's one more comment maybe related to the European factor. So this extended producer responsibility EPR scheme, that will already improve the situation in Asia, because that's where the clothes are made, and European brands, they have to fulfill the demand. If they want to bring something onto the European market, it has to be produced in a way that fulfills, for example, GDPR. They also have to follow ESG reporting rules, so this environmental and social governance rules. That's all, everything is part of the European market, even though it's created in Bangladesh or it's made in China or wherever, they have to follow those rules. And I think that's the way that there's already, we have a lot of Asian companies contacting us because they see that that's the future and they see that's the business. And I think it's coming, and that's a huge potential there.
Thank you. I just downgraded the online audience because they're not participating. No questions from the online audience. We can continue.
Are you sure? Because I saw the channel going up to 11. So there is someone in the chat.
I have the chat room here.
So it was you asking for more questions, right?
No, I told them that, yeah, I told them, you know, you're gonna get low grades from participation. I have a question or kind of a comment as well, is that I come from the technology industry and and there in terms of supply chain management and then the traceability and back tracing, let's say different technology devices, for instance. Yeah, and when you, for instance, when you establish yourself into US, for instance, and then you apply certain registration with the local customs authorities in terms of being able to import fluently into the country with a short lead time. So there's a very heavy back tracing process, on a component level. And then in that area and in the industry, that kind of process has been existing. For me, it's been like since 2000. So I'm kind of wondering is that how much there is, the cross industry benchmarking, from textile industry to the other industries. And obviously that, these kind of discussion are regarding the labels. Surely, is part of the solution and a big one, in terms of the quality information.
Yeah, so there is, because the digital product passport, it's going to be incorporated for so many fields. Textiles is just one. I think a lot like the electronics industry is way ahead of everything else. The automotive industry, all these industries with components coming from different places. And I think it's partially because the textile industry hasn't been like a very high tech industry, so there's not like a lot of these. It's just a very different kind of industry. Also, the recycling techs are just coming in. I think one thing is which is a big benchmarking area, is the plastics industry, because the plastics recyclers, they were like maybe they're 5 to 10 years ahead of textile industry, and that's so completely changing. So there's a lot of benchmarking going on, and I hope that this digital product passport will kind of clarify things. But there's also the traceability is challenging. If you think of if you have a mobile phone, of how to trace that, or if you have a t-shirt. So there's we're looking into different kinds of tracking, like very small things you put inside the fiber, those things. Yeah, so when it's someday it's recycled, somewhere they'll find it and
Bring on questions with more minutes.
I was wondering, I feel like one of the biggest problems in fashion is the kind of like loss of value it had, because it used to be, you have a phone, you gotta keep it for at least 20 years. Do you have any concept or opinion like how you can kind of restore that value? Fashion to make people, to make people like, they're not gonna buy it and then just like throw it away because it's super cheap, it doesn't have any value. Do you know about any concepts or things there are?
Technically, because we used to care so much about, it wasn't our generation, like, we're talking about our parents, grandparents, they used to care so much because it was so expensive to get new ones, and it was sometimes harder to get a new one because there was no fast fashion, there was no open markets like that. So one way would be what I said, but I don't want it to happen, which is war. War does work, but we are not asking for war. I just think it's a lot about your conscience too. So I always give the example, like how many people here fix their socks? Your sock has a bit of small hole. Do you fix it? Because
I think because I know how to. Because when I didn't, I just.
But that's one of the things. A lot of people don't know how to anymore. And that also is like, it's not just, it's about your interest, your personal interest, your personal background. So because a lot of you might say like, I can buy a new pair of socks for, okay, zero is in Finland. So I'm going to guess 10 euros. I don't know how expensive a pair of socks in this country. I fix my socks. My socks are old. But yeah, so let's say you spend 10 euros and for some people, 10 euros is okay. So I'm going to just toss my socks out. And then for some people, 10 euros, even if you have 10 euros, you're not going to spend the money because you know how to fix your socks. That's one of the things that Patagonia tried to do. So because the thing about don't buy this jacket was don't buy it. If something happens to your jacket, bring it to one of our kiosks or something, and we'll teach you how to fix it. That helps. We have in that beautiful website that I suggested you look into, we have one of the company owners called Mandy. She's Rita. She's in course 2, section 3. And she pretty much is trying to bring that idea. So trying to create a website where you can find ways to fix things and connect this website to other companies and try to make it more affordable and something doable. It's not fun. Like I have a dog, my dog sometimes like breaks stuff, and then you have to sit down, I don't love doing it, but I feel like if I don't, I'm also doing a lot of bullshitting. If I need to stop for sorry. But if I don't do that, I will feel like I am being the most hypocritical person there is, because I'm telling everybody to do it. And so I will spend half an hour and sometimes I try to finish it and maybe do things so boring. But that's something that I believe in. During my PhD, I tried to increase that. So I work with PhD was with consumer awareness. And part of it was trying to create classes and means for children to learn, even if you're not doing it was in the UK, but because sometimes you have some tracks, and in these tracks you usually follow and you will learn how to do your sewing and stuff. So even if you're not in one of those tracks, how to learn to do it. It did not work.
I have maybe one comment from an engineering perspective.
Yeah, better than mine.
It's actually to you, because I think you guys are more in the fashion perspective, is that why do fashion houses have fashion weeks constantly? Why do they push new models out constantly? That's what makes people buy new stuff. And that's where the hypocrisy comes in partly, is that. And that's what I may be like, coming from a different side, is that if constantly new models weren't pushed out, you wouldn't have the need to buy any of that.
From a fashion perspective, you can also say that if you have your style well defined, you don't need.
But that's like the idea is just that I don't even know how often Paris has its fashion week, but it just seems to me that they're not. But that's just like one perspective, is that they should also carry part of the responsibility.
It's in the words.
Yeah, so I have a question on the floor about this question. It's like, do you think what is the main motivation that the customer buy the recycled textile clothes or something like that?
What do I think?
Like what's the main motivation that the customer will buy this?
Sustainability is something we grow up with, right?
Yeah.
You learn that if you don't make a change, you're going to have to move to Mars, because nobody learns that we're going to go extinct. So I currently think that it's the people that buy currently sustainable products tends to be the person that thinks that they are helping. It's the same thing about being a vegetarian or a vegan. Not saying anything pro or against, but why some people turn into vegetarians. They are not by principle, not by religion. They turn into it because they think that it's their way to make a difference in the status quo. Do you think, I don't know, you think? Why do you think people use, yeah, this cycle?
So based on some of the work that Ada did on their, with this consumer studies, it's the younger generations that understand. I can't remember actually how it goes, but they have a very defined, sort of data on that. There'll be a report out at the end of the project. It's also a clear difference globally. European consumers are more aware of this. Nordic, and I noticed a big difference in generations. So like my children who are like now 20 plus minus, they are already like very conscious of what they buy. They don't buy fast fashion. They don't buy like extra stuff. Also, they have the possibility to buy like more expensive stuff than when I was young. Like H&M came to the market and it was the coolest thing to go to Stockholm on a boat and go to H&M, and that opened up a new world for us. But it's transforming, and but I also see there's large differences in like the economic status of what it is. It's easy to be sustainable when you don't have to think about cost. So I don't think there's any clear answer to that. I think it's just a way of thinking, consumer awareness, and
So much so that the Nordics is, for instance, Finland is a very expensive country. But that's not what's stopping people from acquiring things. You don't, how many big fast fashion stores do you see in Helsinki? I know that there are quite a few in that shop in Tripla. Yeah, Tripla has some, but it's nowhere close to, for instance, in the UK. It's, even that, you can see, if you look at the market, you can see the differences. But that relates to the sense of citizenship, global citizenship, and we can go on for hours. I watched for the paper on how many people stopped using plastic straws, because they watched the turtle thing.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so now it's 5:44, so we are gonna wrap up. First of all, let's thank our excellent, amazing speaker. And thank you all for coming on this sunny day. A bit of shameless self-promotion, self as in auto promotion. So part of Helsinki Design Week at the Faculty of Arts, Design and Architecture, there's Designs for a Cooler Planet exhibition at the moment. You can see the outputs of research and student work with the theme of invisibility, including me and my colleague Nampio Chan's students from Design Futures, who looked at invisibilities in fashion system through a Design Futures lens, and very interesting projects. Some of them, one group imagined the future of the baby box in Finland, one group looked at femtech, one group looked at the future of fast fashion. So come and check it out. It's on at the moment, and it's fantastic. But wishing you a very nice evening, a nice week, and if you would like to join us for a drink or two, I don't know if Paula and Natalia has time. We will be in the Badger for a bit. But thank you for coming.